Hello and welcome to the Odds Checker betting show sponsored by 888 Sport. This is your Cheltenham preview ahead of the International on Saturday. Stay tuned to hear which horse both Andy Holding and Rory Delargy agree is the value play for the International hurdle.
I actually put this horse up, if you remember, the other week to chase home Buzz, and if it wasn't for that pesky Song for Someone, then he would have done so.
We look at Doncaster, where Rory Delargy tips up a horse at 28-1.
Given he was an 85 horse on the flat, he certainly should be competitive here.
And we speak to 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty, Andy and Rory Delargy on Constitution Hill, the supreme novice chance tipped up last week by Barry Geraghty.
You hope to see him win anyway. It was a start, but performance like that was brilliant.
So on this podcast and video, we're going to be going through the card on Cheltenham on Saturday. We're recording this mid-afternoon, 4:20. It's the evening, given the time of year, on Thursday. So we're not going to do Friday because it will just date too quickly. But we've got prices out for all 7 races on the day on Saturday, and we'll be going through those. So do download the Odds Checker app now so you can get the best prices. We'll be talking through the best bookie offers, place terms, free bets, and of course the best tipsters, including Andy's tips, straight to the app every morning of racing. We're going to start then with the 12:05, the JCB Triumph Trial Juvenile hurdle, where York Sea is the 11-4 favourite, ahead of Patient Dream at 11-2. Message Personnel 11-2, in turn Decivela 6-1 alongside Titian 8-1 Bar. Andy, this is up your street, I would say. How do you see this at the early stage?
Right up my alley, as they say. I do like the juveniles and the novices hurdlers based on their time figures. It gives me a reasonably good guide of what's gone on before and potentially what could be expected. All I can say at the moment is that the juveniles are a right rabble of a bunch. There's only probably 1 or 2 sticking their head above the parapet and running the kind of number that even remotely makes me think they're anywhere near Triumph Hurdle standard. And that doesn't actually include the Triumph Hurdle favourite itself, Phil Dora, who's also right down on the pecking order with regards pure numbers. The fastest horse, funny enough, so far has been Skycutter twice. He's posted 2 really good numbers when he won first time out at Weatherby, and then when he won the other day, albeit narrowly, at Musselburgh. He can really let rip, that horse. So I'd suggest that the one with the best form coming into this race is Patient Dream. I'm not overly keen on that Night Salute race here at Cheltenham at the previous meeting. They all finished in a bit of a heap, and the thing of Ian Williams, who's got beat, actually, as we recorded on Thursday, he got beat on Thursday afternoon in a modest race at Warwick. So I'm not sure that form amounts to a great deal. But I thought Patient Dream ran really well. He stayed on pretty eye-catchingly from the back. No match to the winner, of course, but in light of what the winner's done since and the time figure that Weatherby race, if he wasn't for the fact that he's trying Brian of a green rule, no disrespect to him, I think if he was, like, say, with a Skelton or a Nichols, then he would probably deserve to be favourite off the back of that. But whether either of those 2 aforementioned horses are going to be good enough to contain the top one here, Message Personnel, is very much open to question. Dan introduced a really nice juvenile that won at Warwick about 3 or 4 weeks ago, that won very easily, was well found in the market. I actually think it could have been one of John House's. Forgive me if I can't quite remember the colours, but I do remember it winning quite impressively. But this Message Personnel is said to be very good. I do know someone in the yard that gives me the odd nugget here, there, and everywhere. He said he hasn't spoken to Dan for a little while, but when he did speak to him about the horse when he acquired it, he said he was very good, and he made a nice. He turned in a nice performance when last seen as well. It's been back in July, but he was really impressive that day. I think the favourite fell at the second last, and he was left in the lead, but he powered his way to the line. I really like him. He's got loads of size and scope about him. He looks a proper good 3-year-old. He even looks a 4-year-old now, just looking at the size of him. I think he'll take quite a bit of beating if he adapts to the English style of running, because, like I say, I don't think these are a great bunch with Patient Dream in the best of them.
Message personnel there, 11-2 best price at the moment, but a sea of blue.
Yeah, I think he'll go a favourite myself.
Opened up 6-1, but that is obviously going. Andy says we'll go off favourite. Some drift there for Yorksea currently 11-4. Rory?
I can't say I like this at all. I'm less keen on these races than Andy is, generally speaking, and I think there are lots of potentially mixed messages here in this and the summit at Doncaster as well. Races I'm wary of getting involved in. I take Andy's point about, you'd normally start with Yorksea here as the obvious one, having finished third in the Grade 2 here last time out, but these graded races come early enough in the season for the juveniles, and they can end up being misleading form. Yorksea seemed to shape very well, running on into third there, but he wouldn't have been close to the best of these on the flat. And as Andy said, that form didn't take a boost earlier on, and you just have slight concerns about it. I'd be keen on Patient Dream if Ollie Greenall was in slightly better form. He's an up and coming trainer, Ollie, but his strike rate, despite the fact that he's got plenty of horses in the yard, he seems to have a good eye for a juvenile hurdler as well. But the strike rate's pretty moderate in the last month, and overall this season he's just running at an 8% strike rate. When there are question marks about the depth of the form in these races, you want to at least know you're back in a yard in top form. So yeah, I wouldn't be in a hurry to be against message personnel, but I don't know enough about him, and it's not always that easy to work out how French form is going to translate here. I don't get the info that Andy does from the yard, which sounds like it's very useful, and I think with that in mind, I think it's probably a good bit of advice to back this with a view to what price he's going to go off at. But from my point of view, that's very much third-hand information from me, and I'd have to leave this well alone, quite frankly.
All right, we'll stick with you then for the 1240. The Novice Chase, just 4 run here. My Drogo is the 2-5 favourite. JBY 4-1. Torn and Frayed 8-1. Captain Cuckoo 66-1.
Not much of a betting heat, it has to be said. My Drogo
Hospital Pass ×2 so far for you, Rory, there.
Yeah, my Drogo is clearly a really high class chaser in the making, and his jumping was pretty good on the whole here last time until that infamous incident at the second last fence. He's on the new course now. It's a lot easier dealing with the fences in the home straight on the new course than it is on the old course. He should be too good for these, quite frankly. But do you want to back a horse at 2-5 who hasn't completed and is only starting over fences? I don't want to back against him because I think he is, potentially very, very high class chaser. But sadly, on what's started off as a disappointing card, I'm 0 for 2 really.
Well, we're going to get there. We're going to get there, Andy. Can you make anything of this?
Again, I'd love to be able to come up with something different to say, really. These novice chases, I think, in general at Cheltenham, it's no fault of the tracks because, look, they put the prize money on and it gives the participants a chance to get a feel for what's to be expected further down the line. It's the trainers really fault for not entering. We always seem to get these small fields when we're dealing with novice chases, even the graded races. I can't remember the last novice chase at Cheltenham. I don't know about you, Roy, that had eight runners or more.
Yeah.
It's an absolute scandal, really, and I think it definitely needs looking into. I mean, where are all the novices here? It's beautiful ground, It's it's a head scratcher.
I think the answer is at Doncaster, but it's not either, is
it?
No.
It just seems to be a real problem in the National Hunt game, going forward. I mean, the two opponents against Drogo are handy enough, JBY and Torn and Frey, but they shouldn't necessarily be in the class of Drogo, who would have won here last time out. It was a shame what happened to him. He just caught the top, and that second last gobbled up another victim. Definitely that won't be the last either. It's all about recovery mission here, really. The last thing they want to do is go deck him again. The other two jockeys will probably obviously try and put him under pressure, and Sam Twist and Davis will go off the front on Torn and Fred. I think he'll be better suited to going left-handed. He's no mug. You wouldn't expect him to have the quality of Drogo at the death. So if Harry can get him round Saturday, then it'll be the confidence booster that he needs, and he'll be back on track for whatever Cheltenham Festival race they they have in mind later on in the year. But yeah, like I said, it's just a non-betting race, unfortunately.
Yeah, worth bearing in mind also that Chantry House was turned over at odds on in this race last year before showing himself to be arguably the best of the British novice chasers at the trip. And we've had the Kelvin Hugheses will hope they have better luck than they had a few years ago when they had a horse called Different Gravy in here. He was an odds-on favourite, who a lot of people thought was heading right to the top. And Different Gravy burst on the scene looking an absolute monster the previous season, and then sadly disappeared almost as quickly.
Different Gravy proving to be anything but, sadly. In the 115, then we'll move on. Surely here, Rory, we're going to come to you first, and we can go 1 for 3 in the Simon Clace handicap chase, where Editeur de Gite is the 11-4 favourite ahead of Amula Gold at 7-2. Frero Bamboo 6-1, Notre Paris 13-2 with Cheddleton, Bundoran 10-1, Torpedo 10-1, and Moonlighter 11-1.
This is a lot more like it,
yes.
Thankfully. I'm pretty keen on the chances of Frero Bamboo here, who's a young chaser of Venetia Williams. Venetia's got her chasers in very good heart at the moment. She had a double at Lingfield the other day. A lot is made about the ground with Venetia's horses, but essentially they tend to hit form at a particular time of the year. At that time of the year, we tend to see a lot of heavy ground, but it's not necessarily bad ground related. And part of the reason why Venetia's chasers do very well, I need to make this point, is Charlie Deutsch, who's a very, very good jockey, particularly over fences, and particularly over a trip as well, which is not really an issue in this race. But he was seen to very good effect at Lingfield the other day. He's a real thinking jockey, which is a rarity these days. Frero Bamboo, he was well enough beaten in his reappearance, but we expect Venetia's horses to come out after a break ready to go. But her horses weren't really ready in October, and he stepped up on that, went third at Newbury last time out behind Il Ridotto. Now, he had very little chance against the winner that day. Don't worry about the fact that form didn't seem to work out. I think Il Ridotto just found the Henry VIII coming too soon for him last week. He was nowhere near the form that he showed at Newbury. He looked flat from an early stage, and that was a gamble that just didn't pay off. The form of the race is solid enough. Frero Bamboo, as a 6-year-old, is going to improve again. He's a pound higher than that, but that's a solid race in terms of the collateral form and the time of the race as well, the time figure. And I think he's going to go forward. A few of these have reached their peak already. Bundoran's a decent old stick, but he's a 10-year-old now, not getting any better. Moonlighter's hard to catch right, and his jumping's not good enough for you to ever trust him. Editeur de Gite has got a decent enough record at the moment. I just thought a £7 rise for winning here narrowly last time, especially with Stolen Silver struggling to back that form up next time, suggests he's a little bit high in the weights. And Amula Gold is really an Ascot specialist. I'd respect Chettleton. He would be the danger for me, but I think Frero Bamboo is weighted to win, and it's a fair price as well. I thought he'd be shorter.
Frero Bamboo 6-1, and this early stage only a few firms out. Andy, do you see it the same way?
I thought for 1 minute there, Roy wasn't going to mention the one I fancied.
Chettleton.
Until he snuck it in right at the end as his next best. Rather craftily, just shoehorned it in there. But yeah, I do like Chettleton as a horse. He took part in some very good novice hurdles last season. Novice chases last season by and large, off the back of a good season as a novice hurdler. It just looked as though he really badly needed it. The market almost told a story the other day, didn't it, at Carlisle, and he's come back behind Warlord. I actually thought he was going to defy his weakness by winning 2 out when he loomed up looking as though he was going to do some damage, but then he just didn't quite see it out on the running, and I wouldn't say he faded. He still kept on. He only got beat 2 lengths, but that was a really well-run contest up there at the Cumbrian track, and the form has stood the test subsequently. So I think with a run under his belt, he could be quite dangerous in a race of this nature. The yard could do with the odd win or two. I think they've had lots of horses that have been running okay, but you know, Rory mentioned trainer form early on with Oliver Greenall. You'd want a little bit more positivity from that stable to have a right chunky bet. But I think at the prices, he's probably worth the risk because they're going to go good gallop here, and that's what he wants. Notre Paris, the one down the bottom as well, Ollie Murphy's horse. He's another strong traveller. He ran well also at Carlisle last time out, looking as though he needed the run when looking the most likely winner. So those two are very persuasive looking horses at the prices, sort of from an each way perspective. But I think the one with the most quality or proven quality so far is Cheltenham.
Cheltenham, the one then for Andy, the one with the most proven quality at 13-2, could do an Andy Rory reverse forecast there. Two horses to take on, to take with you against the field. On to now the 150, which is the Racing Post Gold Cup. But before we get onto this, as ever, I was lucky enough to have a chat. We'll sit down and have a chat over Skype at least with 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty to get his thoughts on the weekend's racing. I'm delighted as ever to have 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty joining me today. And Barry, we're going to look ahead at a few of the races at Cheltenham on Saturday that we've already covered with the guys, getting your thought on them as well. But first, we have to look back at last weekend. And I'm not even going to give you the option, Barry, of telling us which horse we're going to talk about, because those who are watching or listening last week hopefully heard you talk about an unraced Nicky Henderson horse called Constitution Hill, 40-1 at the time of recording for the Supreme Novice Hurdle, 4-1 now. What a performance!
It was brilliant, yeah. So we had him here. We had him here since he was a foal, and myself and Warren Ewing owned him, and he went in. He was second at the point last spring. Michael Buckley bought him off us, but you hope to see him win anyway. It was a start, but a performance like that was brilliant, and we held him in high regard during his point season. But the reports had been very good from Seven Barras, so it was as he went to the line 15-14 clear of what was thought to be a smart horse was exciting to watch.
Yeah, it absolutely was. I mean, did you have any? I saw the wry smile on your face when you gave Constitution Hill a mention. Did you have any inkling quite how good he is? And it's interesting to note because the Nicky Henderson yard have John Bon as well, who's currently just about favourite ahead, so they might have quite a decent idea of which of the two is the stronger.
Well, Nicky, I spoke to Nicky a good bit. Now, as I say, his work before we sold him was very good. But I'd spoke to Nicky a good bit, and he was getting a bit more excited about him, which Nicky wouldn't get excited unless he had good reason. I was getting a good word from Jerry McGrath and Nico as well. So it was all sounding good, but you need to see it happen. And thankfully it did, and he looks like a really exciting one for the future.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Andy Holding for his opinion on him after we chat as well, because that Mai Tai, the horse that he beats, the horse he made look very, very average, I know is one of Andy's top ones on the speed figures as well. So I'm sure we'll find out a little bit on what he did on the clock. Looking ahead at this weekend, though, Barry, looking at Cheltenham especially, where are you looking? Let's start with the 150, the Racing Post Gold Cup, where Layla is the 9-2 favourite. Who do you think looks interesting here?
Well, it's a good race again, as it should be, and obviously the Paddy Power form, especially with Protect the Rat finishing second, and what he went on to do in Ancient is now a Gold Cup contender, and I think a worthy contender at his age. So that it all revolves in that form really for me. Obviously Midnight Shadow was a good winner. I thought he travelled really well, got left alone then when Cool Cody fell at the second last, and he didn't do an awful lot in front. He was a long way clear of the remainder jump at the last, but he pulled up in front. He got a £7 penalty for that. I think he can defy it. He was second in this race last year on soft ground. For me, he would be the one. Laylar's favourite, but if you stop the race anywhere between the second last and the last, Midnight Shadow has Laylar. He's done Dostal Phil. They're all on the stretch. So to me, he has a class edge on the field, I feel. Now, it is a different course. It's on the new course, which is more emphasis on stamina than speed. Cool Cody wasn't beaten when he fell either. But for me, Midnight Shadow, I think he's possibly value, is he?
Yeah, he's 9-1 currently at the moment, Midnight Shadow.
Yeah, so you have the ones that had at the market that finished behind him last time. Laylar's gone up £2, so he's only £5 better off with Midnight Shadow, and Dostal Phil has gone up £1. I think Dostal Phil has the potential, having ran well over 2 mile at the Aintree Festival. I was surprised to see him struggle as much as he did for pace through the race, so he could improve. And if he was to improve, he could be the one. But on the book, I think Midnight Shadow is rock solid for me.
Midnight Shadow for you there. Plenty of other cracking racing on the card as well. Where else are you interested?
Yeah, so Cheltenham as well. Obviously, the international hurdle is there. Song for Someone. Scureal. It's Scureal's 4th run in 8 weeks, and I think whatever rain falls between now and then won't help him. He's a very consistent performer, but like that, this is the new course. Emphasis on stamina. I think that's going to suit Song for Someone better than Scureal. Of the others that are there, you've Garja Dream, who was 2.5 lengths behind Song for Someone in Ascot, behind Buzz. Good run, but I would say he's probably a horse who wants 2.5 and even further. So for me, Song for Someone won the race last year. I think he'd be the one to be on.
Song for Someone there. 9-4 best price as it stands. You mentioned you like to look at the Albert Bartlett Novice Hurdle as well.
Yeah, it's a good clash. I like Blazing Cal. I think he's a very smart horse. I know Charles Burns holds him in high regard, and he's a shrewd operator. But I thought on the same token, Gelino Bello, who's £5 better off. I know he was well fancied going into that race, and looks like a big improving type. So I think the £5 penalty might just swing it back in his favour. You have the Irish horses making a second trip to England in the space of 4 weeks, so it's not ideal. So I'd just slightly be siding with the Paul Nicholls contender here.
Yeah, Gelino Bello 7-4 at the moment. Blazing Cal 11-8 in those ones. As I say, we'll be talking through these ones with the guys after this chat with Barry, and then a couple of races we're going to touch on as well over at Doncaster. Have you managed to have a look at these, the 2 Grade 2s?
Yeah, obviously the Novice Chase has caught up a little bit. 3 under 2.5 has been very impressive. He shaped last year like a horse who will enjoy a fence, and he's taken well to it. He's a good winner in Cheltenham. It's hard to get away from him. He looks rock solid, and it's not as strong a race you would hope for. The Juvenile hurdle, on the other hand, looks very competitive. Porticello is a horse I was really impressed with in Doncaster. His jumping was a little bit hit and miss, but I think he'll improve a lot with the experience. He's a horse who stays well. I think he's a real Triumph hurdle type. And Doncaster probably won't play to his strengths, but I think he's a winner in Wetherby, which will be a similar type of track. But I think his jumping can be a lot smarter. He's got a lot of scope, but he was a little bit brave at 1 or 2. Didn't have massive regard for some hurdles on the back, so I think he'd be better for the experience. But Night Salute, very impressive last time. He had a Magistrato behind him. He had Impulse 1 behind him before that in Kempton, and Too Friendly was impressive in Newcastle. So I think it's a very good, strong race. But if you're to ask me to pick a horse out of it for the season, I'd go Porticello.
Porticello, the one there for Barry. Barry, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us as ever on the Oddschecker betting show. Keep giving us more 40-1 supreme chances, and we'll keep inviting you back.
Cheers, George. Thank you.
888 Sport ambassador there, Barry Geraghty. And before we do look at this Racing Post Gold Cup at Cheltenham, Andy, I'm going to come to you here on Constitution Hill. You know, we heard Barry there mention him right at the end of his segment last week with a little crafty smile. He took on Mai Tai, a horse that you have a lot of time for, and the results were pretty impressive.
Well, I'm always a man for solid form in the book rather than genuine tips and whispers. But when it comes from a great man like Barry Geraghty, I think we need to certainly I'd pay more attention, as if he was ever going to be wrong. Having handled this horse had something to do with his early part of his career, and boy oh boy, did he impress in every way, shape, or form at the Esher track. Obviously, I'm a numbers man, so horses can look impressive, and then you go away and do the figures, and you think, yeah, he looked good, but he didn't do anything. But this fella was the absolute polar opposite. He's clocked the fastest time we've recorded from any novice hurdler either side of the Irish Sea, over 2 miles so far this season. And he did it in the manner of a very good horse. I mean, he quickened away, didn't he, from the last? And he made Mai Tai, who I really regard and so do a lot of people, it made him look very second rate. And so that took a lot of doing. I think Connections of Mai Tai had the Tolworth hurdle firmly in their sights, taking him to Sandown, wanting soft ground, almost like doing a métier, the previous year. And, that they come away having that blown to smithereens by a horse who the sky's the limit, really. He's quoted at 4-1. You could look at that and sniff at that and think, oh, God, that doesn't look great this part of the season, given that Willie Mullins has got to, bring out his large battalions, and I'm sure there's 1 or 2 Henry de Bromhead horses floating around. But I think this all sets the right standard at the moment, and he looks extra special. So well done to Barry. Great pick. Hopefully one or two you got on. I'm sure you did, George. You're probably got an anti-post docket burning a hole in your pocket, literally in your pocket. So yeah, you're in a really good position.
I might be. I mean, I don't feel too bad about it, given that we posted it to the nation. I said when he said it, that could be a bit of an Easter egg, and I think it could be a bit of an Easter golden egg come next Easter if it continues. I mean, Rory, what did you make of Constitution Hill there? 4-1 favourite now behind stablemate John Bond at 3s.
I prefer him to John Bond at this stage. I'm not a big fan of punting in the Supreme at this stage of the year, but there's more solidity to his form than John Bond's to me, even though he's come from left field. I was particularly impressed. If you stop that race coming to the second last hurdle, there's 3 of them still going pretty well there, and they're he's third of the 3, traveling okay. The other 2 seem to have a little bit left. The horse who weakened out of it after leading was still on their coattails, but you thought you're in for a decent finish then. For him to have won that by 14 lengths and 17 lengths without the runner-up stopping at all was enormously impressive. And the bottom line is, you don't need too many complicated formulas. If you're watching good racing on soft ground and you see any horse able to quicken off a strong pace from the last, always a sign of a top-class horse.
Yeah, interesting. Going to be an exciting few months for those of us with that ticket.
Just to put a little bit of context into the respective time figures of those 2 horses at the top end of the market, if you're thinking of betting anti-post, so far John Bond, he's run to a 42 and a 38. Now, I know that race at Newbury was a bit of a joke. I think it was the race where they took an 8 to come into the line. So it was always going to be a slow number. But that's it. The bare facts, 42 and 38. Even his first win was only a 42. Constitution Hill, 72.
Wow.
Which already, even at this early stage of the season, is Supreme Novices hurdle time figure. I think Appreciate It ran to a 71 when he came here last year. I think in winning that Grade 1 at Leopardstown, he ran to a 71. So this fella's beat that already on his first run. So, like I say, make no mistake that this horse is definitely Supreme Novices standard even now. God knows what he's going to do in the future.
Yeah, Nicky's comments about him were remarkable afterwards, weren't they?
Well, he said he was the fastest thing he'd ever seen or something, didn't he?
Well, just the words he used. He said he's the most extraordinary horse I've seen in many a year. And given the horses who've come through his hands in the last decade, that really is high praise. And he seems to be the kind of horse who sleeps the rest of the time. He'll do a bit of work, go back to his box and lie down, and then when he needs to do it again. I think that's a good sign in a racehorse as well, because the ones who are really busy and always on their toes, the mileage catches up with them in the end.
Very, very quick over his hurdles as well, wasn't he, Rory? I mean, particularly the last 2. That jump at the last was unbelievable. He's kind of like flicked through it and he's away. And
he wasn't really given an opportunity to show how quick he could be at his hurdles, before the straight, because Nico wanted to keep him covered up for as long as possible. So that kind of restricts you a little bit. But when he was given his head, he was enormously impressive.
Right, we better move on then. There'll be plenty of time to talk about Constitution Hill between now and next March. But we're going to look at this weekend at Cheltenham again. The 150, the Racing Post Gold Cup Handicap Chase, where Layla is the 9-2 favourite ahead of Silver Hallmark at 6-1, Dostal Phil 7-1, Beakstown 8-1, Faranet 9-1, Midnight Shadow 9-1, Cool Cody, Foozle Raffles 10-1. Obviously, Andy, we saw a few of these take each other on recently. We heard Barry just there speaking positively about Midnight Shadow to repeat trick. How do you see this going?
Well, I mean, obviously the key race is that race, the old Paddy Power Gold Cup. Not necessarily with regards to the winner going on to double up, but there's been plenty of horses that have been down the field and then come here and just found the new course a little bit more suitable. You could certainly factor in Laylaw into that category. I think he's got a better record on the new course than he has the old. I was always worried about the old course being a little bit too sharp, a bit too tight for him because he is a quite big unit. But I think me and Rory discussed Laylaw, didn't we? If it wasn't Rory, then me and Ed discussed it. He was the one, if you like, you'd expect to catch first time out. He'd had the wind operation. it looked to all intents and purposes that was the layout job, and if it didn't come off, then you weren't going to get a huge amount of improvement from him. So I'm surprised that he's favourite in many respects. It's always odd that always the ones that are down the field in the paddy barrels end up being favourite over the ones who have finished ahead of them. It just seems to be the nature of the beast. I actually still respect Midnight Shadow. I mean, if you stop the video at the last, he was about 8 lengths clear, and it was only the fact he completely bungled it and lost all his momentum that he gave the others even half a sniff. He was always well positioned. He jumped, he travelled, he looked the best horse in the race. And as we've seen with Protectorat, who chased him home, go on to win the other day at Aintree, the form is about as good as anything coming into this race. And he loves the track. He loves this track probably even better than he does the old course. I had worries about the old course being ideal for him. He was second in the race last year, to that thing of Mickey Winters, Chatham Hill lad. So I think he's probably the underdog coming into this race, and I think he probably deserves a little bit more respect. I'd have to have a few quid each way on him. You know, bookmakers went 5 or even 6 daft places on Saturday. I can't not see him being in the first half dozen. And the other one to mention is Silver Hallmark as well, who I thought ran an eye-catching race first time out at Carlisle in a very good race. We know behind Fiddler on the Roof. He wasn't knocked about. I think Connections very much had not bigger and better things. So that was a good race in its own right. But, you know, like a good pot on their radar, the way that he was handled through that race. You know, we saw Pay the Piper win out of it the other day. He was only just behind him. So I think he's a very, very interesting running off a mark of 145. There is going to be one flying the ointment that we don't know enough about in an environment like this, because he hasn't been testing in a race like this. I think Silver Hallmark is the one. So you've got the solid one, really, Midnight Shadow, for those that like to play the safety numbers angle. But the real floater in this race is that Silver Hallmark for me.
I'm glad that you hold Barry's opinion in such high regard, Andy, because a lot of the listeners and viewers will think that they've just heard exactly the same thing again, because your analysis of Midnight Shadows and Barry is very, very similar, both of you. Keen on Midnight Shadow at 9-1 and Silver Hallmark 6-1, the other one in there for you. Rory?
I do disagree with what Andy says. The one thing I'd like to point out here is that since 2013, every winner, all but one winner of this, has either made the running or been very close up from the start. And the one year when that didn't happen was when poor old Starkey Type broke a leg between the last 2 fences when he had them well beaten. So no matter, however, you look at this race on a regular basis and you tend to see early speed and you think, well, this is going to be set up for a closer. It just never is. And I like a few hold-up horses in this race in theory, but I've got to let them alone. Dayran de Carjac, who was reasonably keen on in the Paddy Power, I thought he was better than the result there. I think he'll pick up a race at some stage. But again, because he's a hold-up horse, I can't see how he's going to get involved. And I think you need to be, you need to be with something that's going to be handy. And that narrows it down quite a lot. And again, it gets back to Midnight Shadow. He's going to be just off the pace. He's not going to lead, but he's going to travel well just behind the pace. And that means he's going to be better positioned than most. As Andy says, very hard to kick him out of the 5, and 9-1's a very fair price. So it definitely wouldn't put you off that. I'm looking to find something at a better price, I have to say. And there's one I'd like to ask Andy about if he has heard anything, and that's and I should have mentioned to the owner when I saw him on Monday. Beakstown's a horse I've always quite liked, but he's never been the strongest finisher in his races. I think he's the last time I did speak to Brian Drew about him after he was third here in December 2019 about what the plan was, and he said the plan was to give him a wind operation and bring him back for the festival. And I backed him anti-post for that race at a biggish price, and he ran well, finishing 5th, but he didn't get up the hill. And I've always thought he's a horse who will win a decent race when conditions are in his favour. He probably needs good ground, and therefore the rain is a worry. If the rain arrives, it probably counts against him. And I think he's probably a horse for later on. But I wouldn't be entirely surprised if this hadn't been a long-term aim, and I wouldn't want to miss him entirely. But I'm going to end up going with a horse who disappointed in this last year. He's ridden against type. Cepage at the top there. Now, from a handicapping point of view, it's not easy to fancy him. And you look at last year's race, he pulled up, having been well fancied. But last year there was loads of pace, and he sat just off it, which doesn't suit him. He's a horse who needs to have a bit of space at his fences, not because he's a bad jumper, because he's a very quick jumper, and he needs to be able to use that speed through the air and his ability to get away quickly from his fences to put other horses in trouble. Whereas last year he was stuck among a bunch of horses, actually made a couple of niggly errors as a result, and was beaten very early in the race. He showed that form to be wrong when he won well at Chepstow in his next start. And then again, he went for what I think is the wrong race for him at the festival. He went for the Ultima for the second consecutive year. He was a blatant non-stayer in 2020, and this time he was nursed home by Charlie George and ran on to be fourth. But I'm still not convinced that he truly stays beyond 3 miles. I think this trip at Cheltenham suits him ideally. He's a course and distance winner in the past at the January meeting. He was also second to Frodon in this race a couple of years ago, when he was 15 lengths clear of the third in a very competitive race. And that just shows you how good he is around here. You're taking a little bit of a chance that he's more exposed in some of these, and he's rated 157 now. That's a stone higher than when he was second in it to Frodon. And I wouldn't say he's brilliantly handicapped, but I think as long as they get him near the front, allow him to use his jumping, then I think Cepage and a Rhythm is a hard horse to kick out of it. And Venetia comes here with the horses in really good form as well. So I've already gone with one of hers in an earlier race. But I think, I've banged the drum for Cepage over the last year or two. I think he's an absolutely fantastic jumper of a fence when he's allowed to use that. They just got the tactics wrong last year in taking that positivity away. So if he's ridden positively this time, then I think he can go very well at what should be a biggish prize. I see him as being 16 to 1 minimum. I think he's not going to be a horse who appeals to an awful lot of people because he's not obviously well treated. But as I said, this is his ideal test. And despite top weight, I can see him going well.
Cepage, 16 to 1 best price as it is, but as Rory says, maybe not one to jump to back because could ease out on the day, although Rory said might not be attractive to most. But I think you just made Cepage a whole lot more attractive to those watching and listening to this. Andy, do you have anything before we move on Beakstown for Rory?
Yeah, just a little bit of a nod towards his chances. I haven't actually spoke to the guy I normally chat to with regards him specifically for Saturday. Never really got round to that in conversation. But what I can tell you that is when he had, I think, 4 or 5 runners at Aintree on the day that this fella finished third, he said that was his best chance of the whole lot. So that indicated to me that he would have been fairly straight. Obviously, horses like that have been off the track for such a while. They're likely to improve just for being out on the track and from that initial experience. But there wouldn't have been a huge amount to work with. I think Dan's very much of the trainer that he doesn't like when a horse come off the back of an injury. He doesn't like to have him not totally fully cooked because he probably could do more damage. I think that's what I've read between the lines, having spoken to connections from that stable. So
yeah,
he's definitely got a chance off 10-1 because he's run well at the track before, as Rory's already pointed out. And you wouldn't say he couldn't win, but whether there's an absolute massive amount of improvement there to come out, I wouldn't be totally sure.
And Cheltenham may not be his ideal track. Obviously, it's nice to get a winner here. And I think Brian Drew's won the race before with Warthog. I suspect he might well, come up short here, but drop again in the weights and then pop up somewhere on good ground, possibly in the spring. So he's just a horse to keep in, but he must have good ground, and he doesn't want a really testing finish. But he's too well handicapped to ignore.
I think there's a valuable race at Newbury, isn't it? Pre-Cheltenham, I think it's a race that Old Grangewood.
Yes.
As either won or run well in before because he wanted good ground. That's the kind of race and track that I think will suit Beakstown further down the line.
Yeah, I could see that. He's also entered, interestingly, at Wincanton during the week in a novices limited handicap chase over 2.5 miles, which may see him in quick ground, but obviously he's declared here, so they're liable to run unless the ground turns soft.
Okay, on then to the 225, the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle, and it will come to you first here. And Blazing Carl is the 11 to 8 favourite, ahead of Gelino Bello at 7 to 4. Barony Legend 6 to 1. Current Mood 6 to 1. Ballygriffin Cottage is 25 to 1, and Lufterg Rocco 25 to 1 to 6 run. Andy, and these two at the top end of the market, sure to be popular.
Yeah, I'd expect this to go to form really. Really, really taken with Blazing Carl when he won it at the last meeting. I was actually standing directly halfway up the running at Cheltenham when this race was developing last time out. Blazing Carl, Gelino Bella, and Blazing Carl just left the Nichols horse for dead. He really did power up the line. It was only really when you saw them in their true paces at the end, just to get an impression of how quick he was going. He's the right unit as well. I mean, when he came in and I watched him come down the walk, he fill the eye and cover the ground. He was a much bigger unit than Gelino Bella. I just think he's a better horse, stronger horse, and I think he'll beat him again, unless something crazy goes on from a tactical perspective. But if they arrive there having not burnt out too much energy and everything goes smoothly up to the point whereby they're swinging down from 2 out to the last, I'd expect that long run from the second last to the last really suiting Charles Burns' horse, because he looks, to all intents and purposes, at the ideal type for the Albert Bartlett, dare I say, further down the line. But I think if you're just strictly looking on A beating B again, 11-8 play 7-4. I mean, there's an argument to suggest he should really be odds on to beat Gelino Bella. Barony Legends, we don't know how good he is because he just sauntered to victory at Lingfield last time out, and he didn't have to beat anything without coming off the bridle. But this will be a much different test altogether. So I'm going to keep this one simple and leave it with Blazing Carl. I think he's pretty smart.
Simple as that for Andy. Rory, do you see it the same way?
Roughly, although I do have I certainly have Blazing Carl over Gelino Bello in general terms. Also in terms of, there's the question of stamina with a few of these stepping up to 3 miles, including Blazing Carl, who'd run over 2 mile 3 before winning over 2 mile 5 here on the old course. 3 miles on the new course is a considerably stiffer test of stamina, so it's always something to throw in there. But to be honest, you watch a replay of that race, and if you had to guess which one of them needed a step up to 3 miles, you'd say the winner. On the visual evidence you saw there. Whereas Gelino Bello looks like a horse with more gears than that, as in, he'd be capable of doing well over 2.5 miles. My only concern with Blazing Carl is he is a big horse, as Andy says. I thought he was feeling the ground a little bit late in the day there. He hung from before the last hurdle as if the ground was just lively enough for him. All his previous efforts have been in heavy. So if the rain doesn't come, and there's meant to be rain coming tonight to some degree, but if the going was good on the day, that would concern me. I'd be inclined to leave it alone. If it rains, then I find it very, very hard to look away from him. And I think Barony Legends might be the danger there. With Ollie Murphy in such good form, he is very much bred to stay 3 miles. He looks like 3 miles won't be a problem to him, both on pedigree and the way he's shaped on his hurdles bar. Now that was on heavy ground, and this is like question mark about how well he will cope with different conditions. But no way of telling how good he was from that run. He won at hard held. I don't think Timeform have given him any extra credit for the way he won that, which is interesting. So he might be the danger on the day. But yeah, as Andy says, you just watch a replay of the race here last month where Blazing Carl beat Gelino Bello and Current Mood. And it's very hard to make an argument for either of them to turn the tables, even though he's worse off at the weights. I think he won't mind carrying a penalty. The weight won't bother him at all, will it? Given his size and his scope, and there's a lot more to come from him as well. So he's a hard horse to be against. As I said, the only thing that would put me off at all, if the ground came up genuinely good, I'd probably sit the race out. But as long as there's enough ease in the ground, then he should be better class than this.
Should be better. Blazing Carl there, a double nod from the guys. On to the international, the Unibet International hurdle, the grade 2, and Song for Someone is the 9-4 favourite over So Royale at 3-1. Guard Your Dreams 11-2, Ballyadam 6-1, 14-1. Heaven Help Us, Wild About Oscar and Hunter's Call both 16-1. Rory will stay with you here. 7 run in the international.
Disappointing race, isn't it? It's an interesting race, and there's not a huge amount between them on recent form, but for a race with the heritage that this race has, it's a rather disappointing turnout. I've got slight concerns with the front two in the market. I like Song for Someone. I liked him in this race last year, but I think he was very well suited by the fact that it turned into a test of stamina, given they missed out 4 of the hurdles in the race. So they only jumped 5. That makes it more of a test of stamina, in my view. If you're a sound jumper like So Royal is, you don't want a long drive to the line. And I think that counted against him. He travelled best in the race that day, but Song for Someone saw it out a little bit better because he stays a little further. And he ran perfectly well against Buzz last time out. Although, interestingly, he's been dropped £3 by the handicapper since that. So that's a slightly odd one. I think essentially the handicapper's taken the view just to start afresh this season and rate him on. He knows he's not going to be running in a handicap, or he thinks he isn't. So basically start rating him on that because he was disappointing twice in the spring and it was hard to get a handle on him. He's, I think, the likeliest winner on paper, Song for Someone, but Tom Simons has had 2 winners all season. And again, it's hard to back horses at short prices from stables that are struggling for winners. And no offense to Tom, he's a perfectly good trainer, and this horse ran well enough for him first time out. But if you're backing horses at short odds, you want to have everything in your favour, and that's just a little bit off-putting. I know he was behind Song for Someone last time out, but I thought Guard Your Dreams ran the race of his life at Ascot. He's also shown that he's very well suited to Cheltenham by winning on quickish ground here at the showcase meeting. He's progressing all the time. He was well ahead of Ballyadam in the Grade 1 Mersey novices hurdle in April. I think he'll improve again. And I think Guard Your Dreams, I wouldn't have thought at this stage he would have been good enough to win a race of this nature, but I think this is cut up a little bit. And again, my issue with So Royal is he's had 3 runs already this season. He's not the most robust of horses historically. He normally gets a break after running 2 or 3 times in the autumn. And Alan King unusually is going to the well for a 4th time here, and I think that might be 1 run too many for him. So I end up with Guard Your Dreams as a horse who's almost certain to give his running and might be able to improve past a couple here. So he's the value bet for me.
Guide Your Dreams currently 11-2 best price as it stands. Andy?
Yeah, we've taken us race 6 to come to the same conclusion with Guard Your Dreams. I actually put this horse up, but if you remember the other week to chase home Buzz, and if it wasn't for that pesky Song for Someone, those pesky kids, then he would have done so. Similar to Rory, I just think he was probably suited to the way that race panned out on that occasion. But I think going back to Cheltenham, probably one of his happy hunting grounds, he might just be able to turn around the form. Not, you couldn't say that with a huge amount of confidence, but at the prices, I think he's certainly worth another go, 11-2. And whereas Someone's only 9-4, and as Rory's pointed out, Tom Simmons has had a quite a year for him. And come this race last year, I think Tom Simmons was totally opposite, wasn't he, Rory? I think he was banging in winners left, right, and centre, so he had a healthy yard.
Yeah.
Whereas this time around, winners are a little bit more difficult to come by. But yeah, that victory over Cool Cody and the other horse that subsequently won, was it Captain Morgs? Couldn't have worked out any better. And his sectionals were really good that day from sort of 3 out to the line. So he's got a bit of tactical. I think the nature of the 2 mile one course on the old course, the new course, I beg your pardon, that long run from 2 out to the line will really suit Guard Your Dreams because he takes a while just to wind up, but similar to Gower Road, who needs a test. So yeah, 11-2 for Guard Your Dreams. Shame there's not the 8 runners. Which was always likely going to be the case, wasn't it? Bookmakers were right. I think they were betting 2 places in the league, and they've got it right again. But yeah, he'll do for me as well. Guard Your Dreams.
Guide Your Dreams there. Double selection for the 2 guides in the International. We'll just cover off the last race now, the Mayor's Handicap Hurdle at Cheltenham, before quickly touching on a couple of races over at Donny on Saturday. Andy, we'll start with you here, where Trapista is the 7-2 favourite ahead of Martello Sky at 11-2. Indefatigable 6-1, Winhouse 7-1, Her Indoors 15-2, 12-1 Bar, 10 runners.
Yeah, I'd probably have a little bit of a stab here at Winhouse. I'm not totally convinced by that Huntingdon race that Trapista won. It was an okay time figure, but I haven't got enough evidence to know how good she can quite be. And I think the 2nd and 3rd out of that Huntingdon race have both got absolutely battered since. So she's one of those sexy ones, which I think bookmakers will be licking their lips with. Last race on the TV, short one, owned by JP, John Joe, all this, the sort of sexiness attached to it. But I don't think she's done enough to warrant her position quite so short in the market. So yeah, getting back to Winhouse, she ran okay here here last year, but I don't think she'd fully developed. Whereas the King horses now are really firing on all cylinders. A victory over Houghton and Hen at Wincanton the other day was, a suggestion that she was definitely going in the right direction. Her numbers are quite good, and as I said, the yard are flying. So I'd sooner go with something like Winhouse each way than I would take a punt with Trapeza. But it's a wide open race. I haven't really got a real gut instinct feeling for this. I've got to put something up, and that would be the one I'd go with. But if I've had a bad day, then I'll probably be leaving at Cheltenham pre the 3:35 and get in a bit of a jump on the traffic, I think.
Winhouse 7-1 for Andy. Rory.
I got a similar feeling about the race. Trapista obviously has got a very nice looking profile, having won 2 from 2 over hurdles. But this is a very, very different test than what she's had so far. She's raced twice on flat tracks against lesser opposition. You can't rule her out at all, obviously, because she could be anything. But when you say a horse could be anything, most of the time they tend to be not quite as good as some people will back them to be. And bookmakers tend to be very careful with horses who could be anything and put them in as short as they can. So it's hard to find value with horses like Trapista. And she's put in as favourite at the moment, but she's a hard one to weigh up. She might be a superstar, you never really know. But every now and again you get one with a profile like this, like Epatante a couple of years ago. I would have been dead against it when she started her second season, but proved to be a different kettle of fish altogether. So I can't back a horse with her profile, but I've no idea how good she is. But the chances are that there's better value elsewhere. Andy's hitting a perfectly reasonable one. Winhouse she stayed the 3 miles well enough when she was beaten here last season. It was a funny old race that. But as Andy said, the way she won at Wincanton last time out was clearly an improvement, a career best effort. And she's going the right way. I thought it might be worth chancing Indefatigable, but it's a tricky one because she almost refused to race at Newbury last time out. She won, and I was very keen on her when she won at Wetherby on the basis that I thought that might not be a test of stamina at the trip, and that's how it panned out. And it was her speed that won her the race, the West Yorkshire Hurdle. So I'd rather have her at this trip. She's, of course, a Cheltenham Festival winner over this course and distance. She's been a very solid mare over the years. And a mark of 145 is not particularly harsh on what she's done. It's just the worry that she nearly planted herself at the start when well beaten in the long distance hurdle at Newbury. But because she's an 8-year-old, she's never done anything like that before, I'm inclined to think it must have been a one-off. So I forgive her for that, and she'd have every chance otherwise. Again, you wouldn't back her at a short price. Again, Paul Webber's a trainer who's not. He's never the kind of trainer to be firing in winners left, right, and centre. He's a low percentage trainer these days, but he's not flying. But I think you're probably getting a bigger price about her because of that blip on her card. Whereas taking her form overall, she's got a better chance than most here, and you might just find a little bit of value. But as with Andy, this wouldn't be my ideal getting out stakes.
Okay, we'll move over to Doncaster then, and the December Novice Chase. Just 3 runners here. But no shortage of quality with the exciting 3 under through 5, 4 to 6. Fantastic Ass 3-1, Emitom 6-1 as it stands at the moment, but one firm goes 100 to 30 there, so that's 6 is standout as it stands at the moment. Andy, can you make any sense of this as a betting heat or just a decent race to watch for us fans?
Yeah, I think it is a decent race to watch how it develops. I think the betting's absolutely bang on. That's exactly how I'd have it. I think Emitom's probably got the most to prove. He jumped all right at Hexham, but he was still a little bit hesitant in and everywhere. So I'd sooner be a value hunter with regard to Fantastic Ass if I thought the favourite was vulnerable, because I do like Nigel Twiston-Davies's horse, always have done, and he did absolutely nothing wrong when he won at Lingford. I think he was spectacular with his jumping and looked fully in control. But this is a big step up against 3 under through 5, who even right this very moment in time looks a national chase horse, doesn't he? I think the further he goes, the better he'll be. His jumping has been fairly solid. The ground's not say important to him, but I think he's a horse who doesn't want extremes. And good to soft ground is absolutely bang on for him. So in a small field where you need a little bit of tactical acumen, he's got pretty much everything you look for. But yeah, I couldn't advise you to back him at 4 to 6. That's not my style, not Rory's either. So I think we've got a similar kind of My Drogo situation here.
Is that the double?
Yeah, it's a bit of a dead rubber. But I mean, yeah, for those that like to play novice chaser at short prices, then That looks a fairly healthy angle to approach.
Rory, anything to add?
No, if you forced me to have a bet in the race, I would take a chance on Emiton because he does have the he has the fundamental class to be able to win a race like this. He does have most to prove, as Andy says. He's been largely disappointing since switch defences, but actually you've only really got to forgive one moderate run. He was only just touched off in his chase debut, and he jumped pretty well that day. And then he was last of 3 at Foss last, but that was behind If the Cap Fits and the Ladbrokes Trophy runner-up. So it's not, that's pretty. It's pretty good form in front of him. So he was then switched back to hurdles. That never really works halfway through a season. So he disappointed twice over hurdles last year. And then I guess the idea was to get a confidence booster into him at Hexham, and that didn't work out, which raises questions about him. But Warren Greatrex has always thought an awful lot of Emiton. It's just a case of being able to channel it. He was a pretty awful jumper. He could really miss a hurdle out entirely. I know Warren sent him to Henrietta Knight for schooling, and she said without doubt he was the worst jumper she has ever seen.
Really?
which is a fair old call. They don't send them to Hen Knight when they can jump well. So yeah, he had an awful lot to learn, and he's been a very slow learner. He's actually he doesn't jump fences the way he jumps his hurdles, and there is still a chance at the age of 7 that things will click with him. As Andy says, you couldn't back him at a short price in a bad race, but you'd rather back him at a big price in a good race, knowing that class wise he's got a chance. I'll just say that I thought what might be beneficial to him somewhere down the line is headgear. Because of his jumping, I think it would give him confidence in his jumping. And we tend to think of putting blinkers on a horse as a sort of, the coward's badge. But actually, a lot of horses need the confidence that blinkers give them. And I think that Emiton would benefit from that. If I run into Warren Greatrex, I'll be happy to tell him that. He might not
Let him know.
it, but he's a decent enough. He won't punch me in the face for it. That's the
who would?
The positive.
That's the next question. We won't go there. Which trainers would punch you in the face? That would be one for another podcast. We'll talk about that one.
Nice man, is what I'm saying there. Yes.
Let's the final race we're going to preview on the oddschecker betting show this week is the 240 at Doncaster, the Bet365 Summit Juvenile Hurdle, the Grade 2, where Porticello is the 2-1 favourite ahead of Magistrato at 9-2. Night Salute 5-1, Too Friendly 7-1, Impulsive 1 8-1, 12-1, Sacre Pierre, Khaleesi 28-1, New Reality 100-1. A proper one for oddschecker this race, with the prices all over the place, with Porticello 2-1 favourite, 13-8 in places, Magistrato 9-2 best price, as short as 11-4 elsewhere. Andy, who's got it right?
Oh dear me. I've been so underwhelmed with these juveniles so far. I haven't got a real strong angle in here. It's a perfect betting race, really. 8 runners, decent ground. The form's there for all to see, but none of them have done a time figure that's even remotely get me any excited in any way. Even looking at their sort of splits and their sectionals in their races, they're all miles below the handicappers and the novice hurdlers. Normally, like I said, by now I've got at least a couple of juveniles, and I'm thinking, at least he's all right. Thank God for that. It's a real odd race. Porticello was workmanlike at Wetherby. He wandered around, and I think he's up to any amount of improvement. But what he did on the clock, 7-4, you must be absolutely balmy to think that's a 7-4 shot. Night Salute's the obvious one because he's done precious little wrong. But like I said in an earlier preview, I don't think the Cheltenham form is that special. But it might be good enough to win a race like this, because I think that the Cheltenham race with the Skelton horse could be a bit better one. Impulsive one will go off in front. He's got the kind of profile to suggest he could go well around this track. Too Friendly was a slow time last time out. So yeah, I'm absolutely, completely and utterly clueless when it comes to this, because I just don't think any of them are any good. But if forced to put a bet out here and now at the prices, I think on balance, I think the 5-1 for Night Salute probably represents the best value, because at least he's showing tenacity off the bridle and a decent turn of foot as well. So I'll probably go with him, but it's a bad race.
Tentative. let's say 5-1. Knight Salute. Rory?
None of these will be winning the Triumvirate, put it that way.
No, I agree with Knight Salute. In that he's just a bigger price than he should be, because he's beaten both Impulsive One and Magistrato, and you can make excuses for those two and why they might be able to turn the tables. And obviously he's conceding a penalty now, but the bottom line is that he's winning races that they're not, and you've got to give credit to horses who are winning. And he stayed on really well after the last at Cheltenham last time out, to suggest that he's a straightforward horse who will take his chances when they're given. So 5-1 seems a little bit big, but on the basis they're all much of a muchness, and the fact that, would you say this is a weaker race than the Cheltenham one, Andy? Or is it? Are they both?
They're both weak. But my point was with the scales of Dan Skelton's, I think he could be way above what we've already seen. You're looking for something to come through, because you think, well, I know where we are with the others, but there isn't that kind of horse in this one. So I think you're probably going to mention Khaleesi.
Well, I thought it's interesting that David Piper's got two virtually identical horses in each of those races. He's got Titian at Cheltenham making his debut, and he's about an 11-2 chance, I think. Unless I've misread that.
When they first and second last time out, those two.
Yes.
Which one are you after?
Sorry, the Cheltenham race. Titian's quite a short price.
Yeah.
Titian was 11s, I think, wasn't it?
Okay, well, whereas Khaleesi, who was second to Titian and was rated, off a mark of 84, they're both trained by William Haggis, both bought for the same connections, and both running in graded races on the same day at different tracks for the hurdles debuts. Well, Khaleesi's 20s and bigger for this, isn't he?
Khaleesi's 28-1.
Yeah, listen, that's on the basis that we don't know how good he is, and Titian is much shorter. When I know Titian cost more money and he actually beat Khaleesi, but there wasn't much between them, all told, on the flat. Both coming from the same stable, as I said. So if Khaleesi takes the hurdles, given he was an 85 horse on the flat, he certainly should be competitive here. And there's reasons to be against a few of these. So I thought at 28-1, he might be worth a flyer at for small stakes. You're taking a chance, and he wore blinkers for that run at Doncaster, whereas David Pipe's not going with the headgear first time. But I've heard nothing negative about him. You see worse horses at that price in a race of this nature. So I wouldn't put you off him. But based on the form, I'd have to agree with Andy and say that Milton Harris's Knight Salute is a horse who should be a little bit shorter than he is.
Khaleesi there, 28-1 best price, and Knight Salute 5-1. Thank you so much to both Rory and to Andy for giving us their thoughts on the day's racing at Cheltenham, and a couple over at Doncaster as well. Please do ensure you download the oddschecker app for the best prices. Place Turbans bookie offers free bets and Andy's tips, amongst others, straight to the app every morning ahead of racing. Thank you very much to 888 Sport for sponsoring the show, and to 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty. Hopefully some more 40-1 anti-post tips coming from Barry from the Nicky Henderson stable in the next couple of weeks. Please ensure you do gamble responsibly. Please ensure you do enjoy the weekend's racing.